Joining us on the program now to look at the geopolitical aspect of this, international relations professor at Otago University, Robert Patman. Kia ora, thanks for your time today.
Kia ora, Andrew. That's a pleasure.
This is, well, honestly, I looked at it and thought, hey, I think I understand it, and then it all changed again. There was high tariffs for most parts of the world, and then a bit of a switcheroo. Apparently, everyone else, apart from China, there's been a suspension, or at least a significant reduction of tariffs, and I suppose this uncertainty has, well, taken some pressure off the markets, but nobody likes uncertainty when it comes to international trade and economics.
Yes, it's an interesting situation. When the tariffs were applied to 185 countries last week on 2nd of April, there was a number of countries, such as Lesotho, which is one of the poorest countries in the world, got huge tariffs in excess of 40%. And Fiji also received a tariff of, I think, more than 30%. Mm-hmm. We got a tariff of 10%, although the thing that I think what was interesting, and I think what's probably prompted the back down by the Trump administration this week, is that they handled that badly. And I mean that in a sort of objective sense. They simply got their facts wrong. For example, New Zealand was accused of the rationale for giving New Zealand a 10% tariff was that we were charging 20% on US exports to this country, which we don't.
More like 2%. Yeah, exactly.
Maximum.
Nearly 2%. So just decimal
and
point.
They did the same trick with the EU.
Yeah.
They said that all US exports to the EU incur a 39% tariff. Again, not true. So I think that's gone badly because it's undermined the perception of a competent administration.
Yeah.
And then, of course, Mr. Trump ran up against Mr. Trump can initiate actions as the world's most powerful country, but he cannot control the reaction of markets and others. And the markets form their own judgment pretty quickly. Wednesday, from Thursday and Friday, $6 trillion in the US stock exchange changed hands in a downward direction. So, and then the pattern has more or less continued this week until the pause that was initiated that you've just outlined by the administration, basically pausing all tariffs against all countries except China, and then saying they would commence negotiations after 90 days on the basis of a 10% tariff baseline. That led to a bit of what one commentator called a relief rally in the New York Stock Exchange. But the trend, I'm afraid, is still downward. Why? Because the two biggest economies in the world are engaged in a trade war, which is the United States and China. And that has huge reverberations. When you think that China is the biggest export destination for in excess of 20 countries, and the United States is in excess of, it's also the top export destination for more than 20 countries, you quickly realize these two countries, the fact that they are having this trade war has huge systemic impacts. No, it's not between the two countries.
This has kind of got an out of the deal vibe to it, isn't it? That make some big noises, get everybody upset, and then offer them something which was worse than what the status quo was, but much better than what you'd threatened earlier. This has just all happened very, very quickly, and instead of it being the US against the world, instead of going to war, well, having a trade war with every nation in the world, now it's just a battle of the giants, really, US versus China. But as you say, from a manufacturing point of view, China's pretty much making everything, even within the US economy. The recovery may not be sustainable.
Yes, I'm not sure it's just between the US and China. I think many countries, the EU has served notice that it'll match US tariffs punch for punch, so to speak. And that's serious. That's the largest and most prosperous single market in the world. And China, after all, has been penalized for retaliating against the unilateral application of tariffs against it. And one of the slightly disconcerting things is that China is now emerging as the champion of the multilateral rules-based trade order. I think there's a lot of geopolitical developments that occur. I think the administration does expect everyone to pick up the phone and go rushing off to the White House. I think many countries will pick up the phone, but whether they will agree on Mr. Trump's terms, particularly after the shocking incompetence that's being demonstrated by the White House, to make a deal internationally, first of all, not all international relations is transactional,
Yeah.
but putting that to one side, to be seen as a good deal maker internationally, it doesn't depend on what you say about yourself or what you say about others. It depends on how others perceive you in terms of your competence
Yep.
and integrity. And I'm afraid this administration has, while it may be able to persuade many Americans about it, the accuracy of its narrative, I think the outside world is much more skeptical.
Just wanting to touch on the integrity aspect, because just before the reversal of the tariffs were announced, a message sent out on Truth Social, Trump's own social media platform, to say, be cool, now would be a great time to buy.
Yeah.
And that was just a few hours before the tariffs were reversed, or at least certainly reduced, and the market skyrocketed again. Some accusations of perhaps some insider trading. For those people that knew it was about to happen, they could have made a lot of money in that 24 hours.
They could have done, and senior Democrats now. I'm just trying to think of the senior. There's a number of senior Democrats, one of whom was a former contender for the presidency, whose name escapes me from the moment, are leading the charge to look at whether there has been insider trading.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the big worries here is that, of course, Mr. Trump said there would be at the outset some disturbance to the markets, but he said, we will ride it out. But you see, people's capacity to ride out these storms depends on how deep their pockets are.
Yeah.
Billionaires can take advantage because they can afford to lose quite a lot of money and then make massive gains.
Yeah.
The average person who's the big victims of this are ordinary Americans who may have their social security and their pensions put in jeopardy by these huge losses. Many Americans supplement their social security, their federal pensions, with investments in the private sector. And that happens here as well.
Yep.
And that sort of money can be wiped out. And it's not a lot of money, but it means that if you haven't got much money and you lose it, it's ruination. So I think a lot of people, and this is why we're getting a lot of protests throughout the United States now. I think Mr. Trump, he's perceived as not being an anti-establishment figure, but being very much a representative of the billionaires.
Yeah.
13 of his cabinet ministers are billionaires, including his commerce secretary. So the other thing here is that there are real signs, Andrew, of dissension and division within the Trump administration. It was striking that Elon Musk is now in a war of words with the Trade Secretary, Peter Navarro. He called him, he basically alluded to the fact that he believed the guy was quite thick. And secondly, he called him a moron. And so this is not very good language for people who are supposed to be in the same team.
Having said
that, though, a very bad message to the world.
Tesla stocks, like all others, tanked, and of course there was a comment made that Musk was more of an assembler than a manufacturer, because most of his parts are made in China before being assembled in the United States. So he's being hit pretty hard by this one. Just finally on this one, though, wanting to look at where New Zealand sits in all of this. We've gone from having relatively low tariffs compared to some of those imposed in other parts of the world, to honestly being on a bit of a level playing field. If everybody apart from China is at 10%, maybe we can deal with that, although maybe we're slightly worse off than what we used to be. However, is it time for us as a nation? China remains our major trading partner, and our relationship with the United States is more in terms of defense and being an ally historically. Can we continue to straddle this one, in your view, Robert? Can we?
Well,
Do we need to take sides?
my view is, and I've made this quite clear for some time, we have to have a two-track approach. We have to, where the interests of the Trump administration and New Zealand converge, we should embrace that. But we should not take a backward step on our core national issues. This administration is undermining the security and the trade interests of our country.
Yeah.
New Zealand is a country which trades with more than 100 countries. It needs a free trade environment to do that. Protectionism is a disaster for us. And we need to stand up for that. That is the view of the majority of countries in the world. We're not alone.
Yeah.
And most countries, middle powers and small powers, need rules. We keep hearing the word international rules-based order. All that means is international relations, which is based on laws and rules and principles. And most countries like that because it gives predictability.
Yeah.
Suddenly, we have an administration which seems hell-bent on dismantling the rules-based order on which New Zealand and many other countries depend. We should not shy away from telling the administration that we don't think the illegal and unilateral imposition of tariffs, sometimes in quite an arbitrary fashion, is acceptable. And we should make it clear that this can't continue on a long basis. We can't do it on our own, but I think there is already indications that New Zealand is cooperating with other countries which are like-minded, which may be making alternative arrangements in the future.
Robert?
So the big danger here for the Trump administration is that they could be generating a post-American era instead of making America the center or the pivot of a recast international economic order.
Hey, interesting times indeed, and hey, it's probably going to all be changed by the end of the weekend, Robert. I appreciate your insight. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
Hey, thanks very much for joining us in the Rhema studio. Thanks very much for watching the interview. It's kind of nice to have an audience, actually. And if you did like what you watched, then do give us a like, do give us the thumbs up. And if you'd like to see more interviews like that one, or perhaps even better, subscribe and those interviews will come straight to you. Don't forget to turn on your notifications, and we'll see you in the next one. Cheers.